Hello, everyone. Welcome to Saturday's edition of Weekend Waypoints, production of SEC Extra and D1Baseball.com. Joe Healy here to take you through Friday's regional results, take a look at Saturday's regional results, and we had a Friday in regionals. Set a record, by the way, just nationally, regionals set a record for most walk-offs in a day. Several SEC walk-offs among those games. Before we get to any of that, though, I have to remind you this episode of Weekend Waypoints and every Saturday episode of Weekend Waypoints is brought to you by Plains Coffee Company, a husband and wife team brewing coffee beans in the heart of SEC country. Free shipping on all orders in the United States. You can also use the code BASEBALL for 10% off of your order. They also do not roast your order until you order it, so it is as fresh as possible once it gets to your doorstep, rather than sitting on a shelf for God knows how long. So lots of good news there with Plains Coffee Company. Support the people who support us, and that is Plains Coffee Company. A little bit earlier today, so my apologies if you're watching this after the fact, the recording, and this time did not work for you. I got to get on the road to Clemson this morning, so I got a little bit of a drive ahead of me, so I had to knock this out a little bit early. But for you early birds, congratulations, you were available. So let's go through the games. We got 11 of them, right? We'll also obviously set the table for what's ahead on Saturday. Got to start with LSU. LSU 4, Wofford 3. Wofford leading basically the whole way. LSU ends up getting 4 solo home runs to score their 4 runs. Milam, then Braswell, then Jones, then Milam again. Milam's was a walk-off because why not? That's just kind of the mode he's in right now. So a big win there. Obviously coming to the losers bracket is tough for anybody, but it was, I think, particularly going to be tough for this LSU team because it probably meant, well, they were going to have to make a tough decision. If they were in the losers bracket in this case against LIU, you probably don't necessarily want to throw Holman in that situation because you're like, well, we should have somebody else on staff who can handle LIU. But on the flip side, you just saw LIU take North Carolina down to the last inning. So do you want to risk not starting Luke Holman and being eliminated, right? So that's just a tricky deal. So LSU avoids that. They're in the winner's bracket today where they will take on North Carolina. And speaking of which, you were this close, LSU was, to getting to face LIU in the winner's bracket. But North Carolina overcame it. LIU took an 8-5 lead going into the bottom of the final inning and ended up losing 11-8. The UNC really didn't mess around whenever they needed a comeback. So, I think you could look at it two ways if you're an LSU fan. One, the positive way is, look, LIU gave them all they wanted. So perhaps North Carolina is not playing its best baseball right now. Perhaps for whatever reason, they're a little bit flat. The flip side of it is that you can also look at it as, well, UNC kind of got a scare, and that might snap them out of maybe they were sleepwalking a little bit. So maybe they'll be a little more focused going into tonight's game. We'll see. Obviously, we don't know. We won't know until we get there, but should be a fun one Saturday night in Chapel Hill. Another walk-off, Mississippi State 5, St. John's 2. Not just any walk-off, a Dakota Jordan opposite field home run walk-off, and my goodness, did he need that. State needs it for the win, obviously. Dakota Jordan personally needed it. Don't have to tell anybody watching this, really, that he'd been mired in a horrendous slump. So that swing came not a moment too soon. It ends up walking off for Mississippi State. Another fantastic matchup. They've got Virginia tonight, and that's, I imagine Virginia's going to throw Evan Blanco. We're going to have St. John on the mound for Mississippi State. Virginia's offense, excellent. That one should be a lot of fun as well. But the big news, not just the win, but was Dakota Jordan, if he's a little more like himself moving forward, obviously that would be a big deal for State. Coastal Carolina 13, Vanderbilt 3. Just got walloped from the jump. Coastal was all over J.D. Thompson early and often. They scored the Chanticleers scored a bunch of runs early and then just kind of put it in cruise control the rest of the way. Vanderbilt was never really in it. And they narrowly avoided the nightmare scenario that ECU is actually having to deal with now, or or Wake, if you want to look at it that way, where you lose and then the other favorite team loses. So then you've got a tough elimination game. But Clemson did walk off High Point in the night game. So Vanderbilt narrowly missed having to play Clemson for its season on the line. As it is, it'll play High Point this afternoon, and High Point can really swing it. So that's not nothing. And obviously they played Clemson close last night, so you know that they're capable of that. So not a cakewalk necessarily, but certainly better than having to play Clemson with your season on the line. Georgia 8, Army 7. Kind of an ugly game. That's where I was yesterday. Leighton Finley 3 and 1/3, 3 2/3. I forget. Wasn't particularly sharp. Wes Johnson after the game said that he felt like he got a little bit, his heart rate got up a little bit in the moment, did Leighton Finley, and so just maybe was a little bit amped for the spot, and you can't really blame him. But the Georgia offense kind of bailed them out, did enough scoring to get the job done. Army was game, though. It's been a while since Army's really been competitive in a regional. They beat NC State in 2018, but their previous 4 regionals, they've gone 0-2, and more often than not have not been particularly competitive. So good to see Army really punch Georgia a little bit early in that game. So in the elimination this afternoon with Georgia Tech, like Army's going to come to play. So, but Georgia survives it. They've got UNCW tonight, and having seen UNCW yesterday, like that's a pretty complete team at UNCW. Like they've got dudes offensively too. They've got some guys in the mound. The guy who threw yesterday, RJ Sales, I mean, good athlete, fastball up to 95, two distinct breaking balls. Just a really good arm, the type of arm that could pitch in the SEC. And UNCW will have to beat Georgia with someone other than him tonight, but I wouldn't be shocked if that's a really close game ultimately. Texas A&M 8, Grambling nothing. Grambling hung with A&M early. It was 0-0 for at least a few innings. Once A&M got going, though, that was all she wrote. Not a lot to add to that one. They will have Texas tonight. I think people will be a little bit amped up for that one. Should be a lot of fun. Arkansas 17, SEMO 9. And this game was closer than that score suggests. It was a blowout early, and then SEMO came roaring back, and then it was a blowout again. At one point, it was 10-9, or it was 8-8. SEMO tied at 8-8, and then Arkansas makes it 10-8. That it was 10-9, and then Arkansas finally found one more push to make it a blowout again, but tougher than expected for the Razorbacks. They have actually, this is funny. Doing this live, I fell asleep last night before they finished that K-State La Tech game, so I'm literally in real time going to our scoreboard to see who won that game. Let's see. Where is it? Oh, I guess I could just go regional by regional. I guess it got suspended. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So we don't know who they'll play yet. If the scoreboard is correct there, that game got suspended. So interesting. But certainly Arkansas had to fight pretty hard to get through SEMO, so they're gonna have to play a little bit better. Okay. Yeah, I see you guys helping me out there. Yeah, the knowing that I had to get up and do this in the morning and then get to Clemson, I was not waiting around to see if they resumed a game that was, I think, 9-4, K-State at the time. Okay, Tennessee 9, Northern Kentucky 3. NKU was game for a few innings, and then Tennessee just kind of restored order. They got to Chris Stamos pretty good, did the Norse, but AJ Causey came in and settled things down. Pretty comprehensive win when it's all said and done. Tennessee's got Indiana Saturday night, and Indiana played well in their game. So I think that's a good challenge for Tennessee. Obviously, I still like Tennessee. I picked them to win the national title, but given the way Indiana played on Friday, I think I perceived that to be a little bit tougher game than I was anticipating it being going into the weekend. Kentucky 10, Western Michigan 8. Kentucky pitching continues to scare me a little. This was a blowout. I think it was 8-0 Kentucky at its peak. They end up really having to fight to win this game. So I guess the good news for Kentucky is that, I think had Indiana State beat Illinois yesterday, I'd feel a little worse about it from a Kentucky standpoint, because we know what Indiana State's about, but Illinois won that game. That's no disrespect to Illinois, but Indiana State was a team I thought could win this regional. I'm less sure of that with Illinois, but certainly Kentucky's going to have to pitch better than it did yesterday, or else Illinois is going to win this game. That's just the long and the short of it. So we'll obviously see which way that goes. South Carolina 8, JMU 7 in 10 innings. Another walk-off here. Cole Messina tied it with a 2-run home run in the 9th, and then Will Tippett with a sac fly to walk it off. Will Tippett had a home run earlier as well in the game. Like, suddenly Will Tippett is a little bit of a run producer. Interesting turn of events there. They have NC State Saturday night. Should be a great atmosphere to teams in the Carolinas with good fan bases. We will see how NC State handles the moment. It feels like South Carolina a little bit is playing with house money and is playing well right now. So it's a tough game for NC State there. Florida 5, Nebraska 2. Liam Peterson pitched well. He was solid, I would say. Florida collected 10 hits against Brett Sears, Big Ten Pitcher of the Year, Brett Sears. And so just a really routine win for Florida in a season where they haven't had a lot of those. And Nebraska's a good team. Jokes about Big Ten baseball aside, Nebraska's good, and they just handled business. And that was something that we didn't see a lot of from the Gators this season. So a positive development there. UCF 8, Bama 7. Back and forth game. This game was happening as mine was winding down, so I wasn't keeping up with this one maybe as much as some of the others. But just kind of a back and forth game that ultimately UCF got one more hit, basically. So UCF will play Stetson this afternoon in an elimination game. The league went 9-2 overall, a good day, I would say. Got pushed in some cases where we didn't expect it. I think that's also fair to say. But I do think it shows how battle-tested SEC teams are, because you're playing good teams all season long. I think it showed how battle-tested they are, that they won 9 games in a day when there were very few. I mean, really, A&M over Grambling, and then I guess Tennessee over Northern Kentucky ultimately were the only games where you felt like the SEC team just kind of had it in control the whole way. The others, they got pushed. But again, as battle-tested as you have to be in the SEC, they came through. All right, let's flip over to some comments here. Connor Johnson, what a day. Let's run it back, boys. Agreed, Connor. He also asked, wasn't that Vandy's midweek starter? Yes, but he has long been their midweek starter. But lately, he's arguably been their best guy behind Bryce Cunningham, and maybe even better than Bryce Cunningham in some cases. So to me, that wasn't as weird as it might look on paper. But I think JD Thompson is one of their better guys. So it's just he's just now kind of getting to a point where he's being treated as a weekend starter. So Jordan on YouTube, morning again, Joe from the Woodlands in Spring, got 32 and a half games today. Yeah, that's that's a little bonus. We get another half game today, 32 and a half games, but another full day. Make sure you're watching Squeeze Play. And I don't just say that because Mike Rooney is also a teammate here at D1 Baseball, but that's just the best way to keep up with everything. If your team hasn't played yet or has already played or what have you, that's a great way to keep up with everything going on. Jordan says he told me that he was keeping me updated here that it got suspended, and then said should be K-State. Yeah, I mean, K-State was in control of that game, but I was telling folks at on our internal chat at D1 last night before I fell asleep that La Tech enough that they're inevitably going to score a whole bunch of runs here, and then it's going to end up being kind of a coin flip game to where whoever wins that game is not really going to be in good shape to play to play Arkansas, or the loser to play SEMO. Frankly, just a tough deal, but I guess it's better than finishing at 3 a.m. or something. Ultimately, Connor Johnson says Kentucky pitching scares you. You say, yeah. I mean, they're really struggling right now to find somebody they can lean on when they need like a big out. I mean, the starting pitching I think is still solid. Nyman did fairly well. He just kind of hit a wall. Trey Puzer's been solid all year. But yeah, I mean, they're right now in the bullpen. If you told me, hey, who's Kentucky go to here to get out of this jam? Now, they've been using Cam O'Brien in that role, but I'd probably say Robert Hogan. That slider that Robert Hogan has is nasty. But again, I mean, it's not like either Hogan or Cam O'Brien has been bulletproof this season. But Kentucky's just in a mode right now where they're just cycling through relievers at a fast rate every game to try to find the right guy. And that's a stressful way to live. And they just don't have any shutdown guys right now. And that's tough too. Most of these teams have, not even just in the SEC, but in the other power conferences, have at least one lockdown guy that you could say, okay, this ends here. We're going to bring this guy in and get out of this. And ultimately you can typically only use that guy once a weekend or maybe twice, but Kentucky doesn't have that. And that's tough. And if you look ahead in the bracket and, they've got Oregon State next weekend, which I assume, Connor, is why you followed up on that. And like, even at home, I don't love the idea from Kentucky's standpoint of trying to get outs against that Oregon State lineup when the bullpen is spinning its wheels. All right. Nick Hemmons on YouTube. Saturday games on regional weekend is the best day of the college baseball season, in my opinion. I agree. Oh, what do you think is the best day of the year during the college baseball season? A regional Saturday is a good one. I would also say the Friday of like the third weekend of the regular season, which sounds weird, but I think you guys will understand what I mean, because the third weekend tends to be the best weekend of non-conference play. You've usually got multiple tournaments that day. That's when the rivalry series in the SEC happen. You've got Georgia Tech, you've got Florida, Miami, South Carolina, Clemson. So that Friday also tends to be a lot of fun. And of course, opening day, that's a good one too. But Wednesday of conference tournaments is another one, because that's like the maximum number of games we get that week. Good question. I'll have to think if there's some others, but yeah, definitely regional Saturday is probably number one on my list as well. Jordan asks, which SEC team are you most concerned about today? Based on the way they played last night or yesterday, Vanderbilt. Because High Point's going to scrap. I can guarantee you that. Like, that's the thing, is Vanderbilt ready to win an ugly game? Because I think that's what it's going to be. I haven't seen who High Point is starting, but I'm assuming it's going to be Matt Little or Brett Wozniak. Both guys are kind of soft throwing lefties. Wozniak in particular. I think last week in the conference tournament, he had a game where he threw 7 shutout and didn't strike out anybody. So it's going to be, you're going to have to hit a soft throw and lefty, which can be a SEC team sometimes struggle with. I actually don't see that in the SEC. You see it in the matchup guys, right? Like, Kirby Cannell, but I mean, even Kirby Cannell's throwing harder than the guys I'm talking about here. So, so that, that'll be tricky. Are you ready to come back at noon? You weren't expecting to be there necessarily. And you have to deal with a team that proved they're pretty good against Clemson last night. And oh, by the way, a team that can hit and is fiery and has a little edge to them. That's not a comfortable matchup for Vanderbilt. Of the winners bracket games for the SEC, let me look at this real quick and make sure I'm not missing an obvious one here. Honestly, what I saw yesterday too, Georgia against UNC Wilmington. I'm looking at the fact that Georgia's already used Zeldin. They already used Maracna. I assume Colton Smith will start this game, and I like that. Like, obviously he's a great arm, but what do you got in the bullpen when Smith comes out of the game? Because I guess maybe Smith could throw a complete game if he's efficient enough, but he strikes out so many guys, he tends to not be that efficient. So you're going to probably have to use bullpen. Can UNC Wilmington do enough against Colton Smith to where once they go to the bullpen, there's an opportunity for them to take advantage? UNC Wilmington's just play. I mean, they beat Georgia Tech 9-0. It was like the cleanest 9 innings a team could possibly play. So that'll be interesting. I will be in Clemson today, so I won't be there for it, but certainly I'll be watching it on my side screen. Will Florida start Cags today is what Nick Hammonds is asking. If we have Florida fans in here who know the answer to that, let me know. I do not know the answer to that. I am kind of efforting looking it up real quick to try to get you. No, I was looking at Florida beat writer to see if that's the case. Yeah, so I don't know. That would be fun, but it is a wrinkle, right? Because typically they throw him in the finale of the series because of the two-way piece. Obviously, they're guaranteed to play on Sunday, so that'd be interesting. I don't know, but he is their best option, right? Because you probably don't want to go into a game with Coppola in that spot, just given how little he's thrown. So yeah, against that offense with Oklahoma State. That's tough. So I think I would, but I do understand how that's not so simple given the two-way piece of it there. Was last night's game a product of the St. John's pitcher just dealing or State struggling at the plate? I think it was more the former. St. John's can pitch. They've got a handful of guys who are really good. I wasn't shocked by that. It also doesn't worry me. Now, I wasn't watching every at-bat, but as that was happening, I did not once really worry about it from a State standpoint. St. John's pitches, kind of what they do. They've got three good starting guys. So we can have a different conversation today. If Evan Blanco goes out there and just shuts down the Bulldogs, then we can have a different conversation perhaps. But for now, not too worried about it. All right, folks, that is going to do it for this edition of Weekend Waypoints. I have got to hit the road and head down to Clemson. I will be back tomorrow morning with a Sunday edition of Weekend Waypoints. We'll be setting up regional finals at that point, so that ought to be a lot of fun to talk about. Enjoy the baseball today. Visit plainscoffee.com if you're looking for fresh coffee beans roasted in SEC country. Use code BASEBALL for 10% off of your order, and I will talk to you all tomorrow morning.